Good morning, class. I had a question come up on Rocket Chat about how do we enable release mode so that we can test our custom error pages. Well, that's actually a great question, and it's a bit of a process, so I thought I'd just go ahead and record a quick snippet to walk us through that. So at this point, we have our beautiful custom error page that we put together. We want to know, is this working? If we go take a look at the startup file, again, we'll see that depending on if our environment is in development mode, we're either going to use the developer exception page, which is going to give us all that detailed stack information about where things went wrong and what went wrong. Otherwise, we're going to use the exception handler /error, which is that custom page that we worked on. So we really want this one to be triggered, and obviously this is the test that we're looking at. So one thing we could do is we could just replace this with a false statement, or another thing we could do is actually put false, and that way we don't have to delete the environment is development until we've run our test. Then we can come back and delete that. So that's one way of potentially doing that. Now the other way to do it is actually change the environment that we're running in. And to get to where that environment's actually set up, it's done through the environment variables, but then also through the profiles that we're using as our run profiles up here. And where these are actually defined is in the properties under this launch settings.json file. Notice that we have IIS settings, and then we have the profiles, we have IIS Express and Hello Web. So these are really the two that are showing up in this drop-down, the IIS and the Hello Web. And notice too that in both of those they are defining environment variables, and that those environment variables are include ASP.NET Core _ environment set to development. Now you might be wondering, is the environment variables mentioned here these same environment variables that, for example, when we had to change path to set up Java in Windows? And yes, they are. This is actually where it's going to look for those environment variables. But the ones that we actually put into this JSON file, Visual Studio will dynamically inject those and overwrite any that have the same name with whatever we put in here. So rather than messing with our current configurations, let's go ahead and do a Hello Web production profile that's going to put us into production mode. And I really want all these commands to be the same, except instead of the development environment, we're going to put in production. And generally in web development, we have three potential environments we could be running. We have development, we have production, and there's often also a test environment, which we would use for testing. So now that we've made that change, and if we save this, notice here, now we have Hello Web, but also this Hello Web production. We could do the same thing and make an IIS production if we wanted to have a production environment for that. Now, there's still the question of how does that error actually occur for us? So how are we going to make that error happen? Because we'll need an error to actually trigger. An easy thing to do is jump into one of our pages, and in the CSS, or C# code, just throw an exception. Now, when we run the server in that production mode, it will go ahead and launch our website for us. And the first page we're going to hit is that index.cs.html, which is going to immediately throw that exception that we just programmed in. And there we have our custom error page with the message that we prepared. So that's a little bit of an overview of how we can get those custom error messages to show up by changing the actual environment, by adding a new launch setting. Of course, we do not want to leave this code in here to throw exceptions in the homework code that we're going to be turning in. That would be unfortunate, because that will make your program not meet the requirements. Also, if, like I said, the other way we could do it is we could have just put a false here, just made sure that we're using this exception handler instead of the development exception page. If you make that change, you also need to remember to take that false statement out, because we want to make sure that this will actually compile and run correctly in the project that you're turning in or the project that you're actually deploying out to the web.